Well, hey there guys, it's your favorite backyard geographer. I was out in the garage going through my junk and I thought of you. It should come as no surprise that I just love history. And now, did you know that China has one of the greatest man-made marvels in the world, with a history spanning over 2,200 years? Discovered on accident in 1974, this wonder still amazes historians, archaeologists, and tourists alike. Join me today as I share the history and the story behind my original terracotta soldier from China. So let's first talk about the history of the actual terracotta soldiers themselves in China. Now, as the legend goes, back in 1974, some local farmers in Lintong County, China would unearth one of the most exciting archaeological sites in decades. Since then, hundreds and hundreds of figures have been unearthed, which include warriors, chariots, and horses. An estimation from 2007 was that out of the 3 archaeological pits found containing these terracotta armies would hold over 8,000 soldiers, 130 chariots, and 520 horses. They even found some additional cavalry horses, of 150 of those, and that being said, a majority of these are still buried today. Did you know that there were other terracotta non-military figures found nearby, which include acrobats, strongmen, and even musicians? This was more than a burial site of statues. It was a massive mausoleum. Now, why did these pits and soldiers exist? Well, they were all part of a master plan by the first emperor of China, Emperor Qin. The history behind that is, well, he was driven to conquer death itself. Emperor Qin immediately began to plan his burial as soon as he took the throne. And more importantly, his underground palace, or a mausoleum, which would include an army of terracotta warriors to protect him in the afterlife. Construction of the mausoleum began in 246 BC, just right after he became emperor. He was only 13 years old. The project eventually would involve over 700,000 workers to complete. Now, the location he chose is Mount Li due to its unique and unbelievable geology, which includes all of the jade and gold mines in the area. Fun fact, when they were excavating this in the late 70s, it also revealed other mysterious findings within the mausoleum, such as incredibly high levels of mercury and evidence that this poisonous substance had actually coursed an intricate system of underground troughs replicating the topography of the actual rivers, sea carvings, and surrounding landscape. Some suggest that the emperor believed mercury had life-giving power, and so he surrounded himself with that toxic element, believing it was yet another way he could live forever. So now let's talk about how these soldiers were made. Now, the Terracotta Army itself, the figures, were manufactured in workshops by government laborers and local craftsmen using local materials, such as clay. The heads, arms, legs, and torsos were all created separately and then assembled by luting the pieces together. When completed, the terracotta figures were placed in the pits in a precise military formation according to their rank and duty. What's interesting, though, is that the faces were all created using molds. There are at least 10 molds used, but aside from that, they were all carved to individually replicate someone different. So all the faces are different on the terracotta soldiers themselves. So the clay was added, assembled, providing individual facial features to make each figure look a little bit different. It is believed that the warriors' legs were made in the same way that the terracotta drainage pipes were manufactured at the same time. Then they were glazed, hand-painted, every single one of these, and then placed inside of this mausoleum. A fun little interesting tidbit that was presented for tourists that go there is that actual remains of soldiers, the internal organs, would be placed inside of each of these replicant terracotta soldiers themselves to go with the king into his afterlife. So if someone had died, they would put the internal organs inside the soldiers. Now, the Terracotta Army is part of a much larger cemetery. Ground-penetrating radar and core sampling have measured the area to be about 38 square miles. So let's talk about this guy. So this is a standing general. This was purchased at the actual site in China from someone who visited the terracotta soldier armies. Now, This is, as I said, is a standing general. At present, there are only 9 standing generals that have been excavated from the pits, which makes the generals the most valuable and rare. The most prominent feature is the delicate decorations on the chest, which indicate their higher rank. Standing in the front of the formation, with arms at his sides, the general gives his soldiers a determined look. What surprised the scholars was that out of the 9 of them that were unearthed in pit number 1 and pit number 2, there was not a single general found in the 3rd pit that was excavated at that site, which is believed to be the headquarters of the underground army. So again, some fun facts about this guy is that this is a replica of one of those full-size soldiers. But what's interesting is that the clay that he is made from is the actual clay that the terracotta soldiers were either made of or was excavated from what was around them. So it really has an additional piece of history beyond just being a trinket that would have been purchased there at the location. So this is a little bit more in depth, and which is really exciting. I did some additional research on the soldiers themselves, these little ones that you could buy at the site, because the money helps to go to preserve the research, is that there's a lot of knockoff soldiers that are being sold from outside around the airports and different locations that are actually not made out of clay. So this is an actual terracotta miniature soldier, which is really exciting. It's a great way to bring that history back to us. The value of the full-size terracotta soldiers, one has never been sold. There's not an actual value that's been denoted, but I was doing, again, some additional research on it, and we're talking in the millions for just a soldier. They have allowed them to go on tour, which is kind of neat, so you get to experience the soldiers. It was in California for a short time. But other things that are just kind of interesting about the figure is just that this is 2,200 years of history. And although they look like clay, we have to remember that they were all hand glazed, painted, and detailed. The reason they look the way that they do is because first, they're 2,200 years old, right? The full-size ones. But as soon as the oxygen hit the paint on the soldier itself, it went into powder and just completely fell apart. So that's why they haven't exhumed the remaining soldiers and pieces that are found within the mausoleum, because they want to preserve the paint chips, and they haven't quite found a way that they can pull them out and preserve the paint and to keep it historical. Well, maybe you've been to China, maybe you've seen the terracotta soldiers. Be sure to like this video, comment below, and we'll talk soon. Well, hey there, guys. It's your favorite backyard geographer again. This is the dogs out in the field. I thought I was doing the because we're just talking about the field. Believing it would be one other way to prevent to live forever.